It's an honor to be the opening speaker, and it's an honor to be here because I think this is one of the most important and influential conferences of the year. We have some of the biggest CEOs and politicians here. We also have some of the world's top young activists here in the audience. I got to speak at the Future Climate Leaders Summit on Saturday. Anybody in this room from the Future Climate Leaders program? You guys are awesome. You guys are really awesome, and the reason that is because it's not the CEOs or the politicians that are here that are actually going to change the course of history on this. They can start laying the groundwork for that, but it's the people who were in their room on Saturday and Sunday and now are here to this conference that are actually going to pave that road for the long run, and it's just an honor to have you guys here too. So I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin as a conservative activist. I was a conservative activist my entire life, starting at the age of 10. Knocking doors and making phone calls before my voice even changed. And it hasn't changed that much, but you know, we'll deal with that later. And one of the things that really bugged me was the conservative stance on climate change and the environment. I was frustrated by it every time that I went out on a hike with my family, anytime we went to our small cabin on a lake in rural Wisconsin. And when I went to college at the University of Washington, where I solely went because I wanted to go somewhere where I could hike and ski, that was literally the only reason. My parents weren't big fans of that, but that was the reason I went out there. And I started to realize that I wanted to do something about it, to bring conservatives to the table to solve climate change in the environment, which is something I think everyone in this room can get behind. But I had an opinion that I think a lot of people might share in this room that was broken very quickly, which is that I thought that there was this generational divide and political divide on climate change that was almost unbreakable. That conservatives and Republicans, especially in the era of Donald Trump, hated the environment, and that we had to basically create a brand new culture around environmentalism that included young conservatives, but kind of just let the older generations, honestly, die out. Then I started to travel the country to try to meet with conservative communities and actually understand where they were coming from. And I quickly learned something that is an important secret to share, which is that conservatives care about the environment a lot. These are the people that live in these communities that are in the environment. These are the foresters, these are the farmers, these are the people that rely on the environment to survive. They also are the ones that are providing us the resources for us to survive. And yet for years, we vilified those communities and refused to visit them and refused to engage with them to the point where their only option in their minds is to jump to the opposite extreme and to say, to hell with the environmental movement, I'm just against everything they stand for. And because of that growing divide, the solutions have become even worse. You have one side that says that we need a Green New Deal, and the other side says that this issue doesn't exist at all. That divide will never solve climate change. And until we engage the conservative communities, the rural communities, we will never solve climate change. But there's an inherent difference between the way that conservative and rural communities think about climate change and the way that maybe we do as more urban people. I would assume most of us are more urban people. I live in Phoenix now, and I'm sure all of us kind of most of us live in bigger cities or suburban areas. Conservative communities like a few things: a slower pace of life, the importance of community and their local community. They don't like rapid change and radical change. And they don't really care as much about efficiency as we do. They don't care about kind of getting from A to B as quickly as possible and picking up your laundry as you pick up your groceries as you get them all delivered to your door. They don't care as much about that. And so when we make our policies just for the urban community, we leave behind an entire additional subset of the population that is so imperative to this problem. And when I started ACC, I went to an environmental NGO kind of private gathering of CEOs, where one of the top CEOs of one of the more urban environmental organizations told me that I was the first conservative that they had ever met that cared about the environment. And a few months later, I toured a coal plant in Utah, where I was told by the coal workers that I was the first environmentalist they had ever met. That divide is the problem. We are refusing to talk to each other. We are refusing to understand where each other are coming from. We're refusing to move past the days of Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow and the divisive news cycle that we have. We're feeding into it by allowing this to become the most partisan issue of our time when it should be the most unifying issue of our time. So what can climate change activists do to change that? We must stop the one-size-fits-all environmental approach that we've used for years, that pins rural people as the enemy, that pins conservative communities as the enemy. Too often I've been in conversations with climate leaders where I'm told that flyover country just needs to be ignored, and that we just need to ignore and move past and just push right through the people who are trying to go against us, when in reality they actually have a lot of the same concerns we do. We have to move past that. We must move past an approach that basically says that we need to just have a big government, hands-on policy that's at the throats of everyone to solve this problem. We must move past the doom and gloom and the alarmism that is scary for people, but that makes people who are struggling to put food on the table not care about this issue as much because it's down on the priority list, and being told that this is the worst problem that we've ever had since the start of humanity, when they're struggling to just get their crops off of their farm to us, they will never care about it if we continue that approach. We must embrace an approach that includes all communities, that listens to all communities, that we visit these communities. I can guarantee that most of the climate activists, the AOCs of the world, the Gretas of the world, they do important work to raise the prioritization and the narrative on this. But we have, no matter if you're AOC, Greta, or me, or anybody in between, we have to be visiting these communities. We must include them. We must understand where they're coming from. We must look at the priorities that they have and try to marry them with the climate solutions that we all know that we need. We also must make the environment about environmentalism again. This is about the physical planet that we love so much. This is about the beautiful areas that have captivated our country, like the Yellowstone TV show and our national parks. This is about the legacy of protecting our environment. And when we make that a part of environmentalism again, we get a whole new crop of people involved. Those are the values that the future of the climate movement must have. Because this is not a debate of who is right and who is wrong, who is good versus who is bad. This is a debate of how we can find commonalities, use common language, understand each other, and find solutions that work for our own individual communities. That's what fighting climate change should be about. And I've been told by so many donors and environmental NGO CEOs and different activists that we shouldn't even try to engage with those communities that have been out of this conversation for so long. But what I tell them is this: the only thing that's more impossible than engaging those communities is fighting climate change without those communities. There is no way to solve climate change. It is absolutely impossible if we don't. So it is imperative that we break out of our silos. It's imperative that we go to places that are uncomfortable. It's imperative that we have discussions that are incredibly, incredibly unwelcome in the climate space. It's important to understand how we can use that reality and make it a global reality, because as someone who's gone to the United Nations COP, this is something that has been an issue there too. In other countries, they're having the same problem. So we must turn environmentalism on its head and make it about the environment again, bring these communities into the discussion, and I promise you that there is more common ground than what we think. I promise you that it's more than what we see on Twitter. I promise you it's more than what we hear on Tucker Carlson and on Rachel Maddow. We all know that, but we have to live it. We have to breathe it, and we must make climate change the least partisan topic in the American politic today. And if we don't, we can't solve it. With you guys here in this room, the leaders in this room, we can do that. And it's an honor to be with you this morning. Thank you so much.